That was the acceptable collateral damage of authenticity. And because I've always been cognizant of the fact that as a white cisgender heterosexual, man, I didn't really have as much to lose as LGBTQ human beings do.
I'm Sarah Cunningham, pronouns are she, her, founder of Free Mom Hugs.
And I'm Katrina Cobb, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the program director and social media manager for Free Mom Hugs. And we are proud to be a part of the mission and the movement that is keeping queer kids alive.
Our mission at Free Mom Hugs is to empower the world to celebrate the LGBTQIA+ community through visibility, education, and conversation.
And in our second season of the Pride 365 podcast, we're focusing on Out for Equality. With Coming Out Day on October 11th and an historic election approaching, we felt it was important to speak to LGBTQ+ folks about their coming out stories and to hear devoted allies describe their journeys to not just supporting the LGBTQ+ community, but fighting boldly for their equality.
This presidential election is one that no one can keep their vote silent on. In order to ensure a safe and free America for our LGBTQ+ family and friends, the time is now to come out for equality. In 1978, Harvey Milk, California's first gay man to be elected to public office, said, "Gay brothers and sisters, you must come out. Come out to your parents. I know that it's hard and will hurt them, but think about how they will hurt you in the voting booth. Come out to your relatives. Come out to your friends, if indeed they are your friends. Come out to your neighbors, to your fellow workers, to the people who work where you eat and shop. But once and for all, break down the myths, destroy the lies and distortions for your sake and for their sake."
In this episode of our second season, Out for Equality, we'll be visiting with John Pavlovitz, author, pastor, and educator who came out from the megachurch culture to become a fierce and outspoken ally for the LGBTQ+ community. After realizing some of his beliefs were counterproductive to loving all of humanity, he emerged with a beautiful passion for justice, mixed with a little irreverence. And now, Sarah and John both have their hair on fire for equality. Now, let's get ready to ruffle some feathers.
When Chasten Buttigieg was asked on an elevator at our Love Revolution conference, "What is Free Mom Hugs?" he responded simply, "It's a group of moms keeping queer kids alive."
And we are so excited to announce the second annual Love Revolution Conference. Last year in Oklahoma City was an incredible success with over 300 people in attendance who all left empowered to love bigger and better. We can't wait to gather again in Dallas, Texas, April 4th through 7th in 2025, so we can continue to change the world together.
You speak your truth, a quiet flame, a voice that whispers your sacred name. The world may tremble, it may resist, but love is stronger than fear's clenched fist. Each step you take, the shadows fade, and brighter paths for you are made. It gets better. This much is true. The world grows brighter because of you. Brave, author unknown. Coming Out Day this month and a crucial election approaching, we felt it was important to share coming out stories for the second season of the Pride 365 podcast, both from the LGBTQ+ community and stories from allies who are deep in the trenches, using their voices and platforms to educate people about the humanity of the LGBTQ+ friends and family.
The phrase coming out is used to describe that pivotal time in a gay, trans, or non-binary person's life when they choose to self-disclose their sexuality or gender identity. Coming out can come with great risk, but for most, the reward of being authentic far outweighs the negative consequences.
And allies often come out as well, especially if they have lived either not accepting the LGBTQ+ community or not being vocal about it. Many times, parents may not be affirming until they have a child come out to them. I've shared my story often that when Parker came out of his closet, I went into mine. I needed to search this matter out and figured out how I could love my son fully while my mind was still full of misinformation about sexuality and gender. Once I got educated and learned about science and history and theology, I came to realize that I had been duped. And then I discovered that my straight son had more rights than my gay son. Then I knew I had to fight for him like my hair was on fire.
And my coming out story was not what I wished it could have been. I was working as a youth pastor and worship leader here in Oklahoma City. I had been fighting or dealing with being gay or having same-sex attraction to the point that as a 25-year-old, I had put myself into conversion therapy.
Conversion therapy is any type of therapy, practice, or prayer that would try to change a gay person straight. It's deadly, it's dangerous, yet it's still legal, sought out, and paid for.
Right. And at that time in my life, I was told and believed that being gay was wrong and the greatest of sins to God. It was after a same-sex scandal broke out in our church that I was fired for having what they called the spirit of homosexuality in me, and was told on the day that I was fired, the reason was that it would be better for the children, for me not to work there anymore. I was then outed by the church, and my story was told before I was ready to tell it.
That upsets me so much. And it's such a prime example of letting people tell their stories, come out on their terms, and when they're ready. This is the best way you can earn trust with your LGBTQ plus children. Support them fully and always get permission to tell someone, friends or family, about their sexuality or gender identity.
After I was fired, I went on my own journey, similar to yours, Sarah, full of studying and books and TV shows with gay characters. I was especially addicted to a show on Bravo at the time called Working Out. It was a series based on a lesbian woman who was a celebrity trainer in Hollywood. Well, needless to say, watching that show, I knew, yep, I'm gay. I also reached out to lesbian comedian Kate Clinton, who had an amazing way of telling stories that made you laugh, but also made you think. I asked her in an email, how can I begin to be an activist for the LGBTQ community? She actually responded to me and told me that simply coming out was its own form of activism and would make an incredible difference. It was then that I began to come out on my own and tell my own version of my story, and what an incredible weight that was to be lifted off my back. What's good on social media these days?
Free mom hugs! Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And hey, we got a YouTube channel with all our videos and educational panels.
And our website is full of valuable information and resources to help you on your journey. You can also find ways to get involved, donate, and purchase your authentic Free Mom Hugs merchandise. We refer to our OG shirts as the billboard of our mission. When people see someone in a Free Mom Hug shirt, they instantly know that person is a safe and supportive ally. And with every purchase, the funds go directly back into the organization so we can continue on the mission to create visibility, education, and conversation. Go to freemomhugs.org today.
We are so grateful for all of you who continue to give and to support the mission. I know that each dollar goes far and wide and makes a difference in the lives of the LGBTQ plus community and those who love them. I'm Sarah, and joining us today remotely is my good friend John Pavlovitz. Say that fast 3 times. We have known each other since my journey began in 2015, and watching him evolve into such an important voice and allyship has been so inspiring. John has a church history similar to mine, and now has a reputation for not beating around the bush, but saying things that we wish we all had the courage to say.
Right. You and I were at breakfast the other day talking about this conversation, and we were raving about his holy irreverence. I said, I can't wait for John to say things that we have to delete. But seriously, I have loved John since I met you, Sarah. He is someone who has made me feel protected and defended. I know John will never back down from telling the truth about me and my community, and I rest a little easier at night knowing there are people like John out there. And Sarah, you have a phrase of John's that you share often when speaking to groups of allies and the LGBTQ plus community.
I do. I wish I had a nickel for every time I said it. But John, you wrote, and I don't know it's your original quote, but you said it and it just resounded so deeply within me. It says, I woke up this morning looking for hope, and here you are.
Yes, and I want to say that back to John. As a member of the LGBTQ plus community, I woke up looking for hope, and here you are.
Now let's officially introduce you, John. John Pavlovitz is a writer, pastor, and activist from Raleigh, North Carolina, 25-year veteran in the trenches of local church ministry. John is committed to equality, diversity, and justice, both inside and outside of faith communities. When not actively working for a more compassionate planet, John enjoys spending time with his family, exercising, cooking, and having time in nature. He's the author of If God, I almost said If Gay is Love. Well,
that too.
If God is Love, Don't Be a Jerk, A Bigger Table, Hope and the Other Superpowers, Low Rise and Stuff That Needs to Be Said. And he also plays an electric guitar.
What?
And has a history in a band.
That's awesome. Well, John, we are so glad that you are here. Welcome.
Oh, Katrina, Sarah, thank you so much for those incredibly kind words. It is a joy to be with you and really looking forward to our time today.
I read an article back in the way back, and it was in Indie Week. So correct me if any of this is inaccurate, but it was, I feel like, an amazing beginning to your story. And it talks about how you went to college at the University of Arts in Philadelphia. And it says, where he'd arrived with a scholarship to study graphic design. It's difficult to comprehend how my head didn't simply explode upon arrival, you said. With no idea of what to expect, he was suddenly exposed to a wide-ranging, colorful diversity beyond anything he could have imagined. Artists, dancers, musicians, gay, straight people he came to know and care about. Then his brother came out as gay. Pavlovitz had grown up with a vague discomfort about gay people, yet his first reaction at hearing the news about his brother was a relief. He finally understood why his sibling had been so depressed, and he was happy that his parents embraced his brother's identity.
Yeah, those times are just they're so embedded on my heart, and the memories are just as clear today as they were when they happened. For me, it was a revelation. It was a gift being away and getting this experience that took me out of the protected bubble that I lived in. And as I often tell people, if I had stayed in that bubble, I would have probably grown up to be a fairly decent human being, and hopefully I would have had many of the same values. But what that did was it just expanded my understanding of other people's experience of life. And then that really changed me, and it really tapped into muscles of empathy that I didn't realize were there. And it was only later when my brother came out that I was able to connect some of the dots with his history. And I can remember, though, having such gratitude for the experience that I had before then that prepared me to receive him well, and that really removed the obstacles that maybe the religion I grew up in would have put in place. And then really, truly grateful that my family, because I wasn't there when my brother came out, I was away at school, and just to know that he was given this really beautiful initial embrace was so helpful in his journey and our journey as a family.
We often tell parents that how you react will have a ripple effect on the rest of the family. And I think you just said it right there.
I've written about that moment that when the families, I got back from studying abroad, and I remember, coming home, and there was just this strangeness in the dynamics, and no one had said anything initially. I didn't hear about it over the phone. And then my family began to tell me what had happened, and they relay this story that I've written about that I love, that there was some emotional upheaval, which is not unexpected, especially because I come from a big Italian family. So even when we're happy, we yell, and they were going back and forth, and there was crying, and there was all this effort to understand. And I remember my mom saying that everything had kind of quieted down, and they're all sitting there in the kitchen, and my mom begins to cry, and my dad looks at my mom and says, "Why are you crying?" And she looks at my brother and says, "I just want him to be happy." And my dad said, "Don't be happy, Eric, be gay." And then it was just this moment where my dad was acknowledging through humor, which he had then followed up with more explicitly saying, "Hey, there are things I don't understand right now, but you're my son and I love you. We're a family and we're going to keep going and we'll figure this out." And that's all he needed to say. And I often tell people, it takes so little to get it right in those first moments, to simply affirm your love for the person in front of you, and all the other stuff can be worked out later. What happened for us was my parents really established that we are united as a family, and that whatever the adversity or pushback is going to come, we are going to face it together, and that we will prioritize one another. And, you so often in all these stories, Katrina, Sarah, you know that there are so many times people choose their idea of God over their child, or they choose their politics over their family member. And my family, in whatever mysterious way that happens in that instant, they said, "I'm choosing my child, and everyone else is going to have to deal with it." And that gave us sort of a united front, even in the different ways we were processing this.
I love that. And it makes me think too, John, we're talking too about allies coming out. And, for many of you that defend those of us in the LGBTQ plus community, a lot of you maybe didn't start that way. And, for you also in the church, it makes me wonder, was your brother, in a sense, your motivation to become an ally? Or were you also on a journey realizing whether or not you had a gay brother, that there were some mistruth going on here, and you wanted to advocate for the marginalized, regardless of if you had a family member or not?
Well, it's really interesting because I was, yes, as you mentioned, I was going to school for graphic design, illustration. I was working in my field after college and ended up in ministry, sort of what I thought was by accident. But during that time, I was really trying to reconcile the teachings I grew up in as a child and what I was beginning to see and feel about issues of sexuality, gender orientation. And as I've often said, life began to argue with my theology. So I was wrestling with all of this before I even knew that I had an LGBTQ sibling. And it was only when I became a minister that I felt those tensions between my convictions and the position that I was in, and the very political nature of being a pastor and trying to speak one thing perhaps from the pulpit, but then have this other inner spirituality, and trying to figure out, how do I live with both of those? And so what happened was, when my brother came out, I was actually the last person who found out, not just because I was geographically separated from the family, but because I was the most outwardly Christian, or the most visible. And my brother thought that I would somehow be less open than the rest of the family. And that really was telling to me. And it reminded me of just what the effect of religion, or the idea of spirituality, often has on LGBTQ people, the way that is an immediate buffer or barrier, really. And so it was a joy to kind of express to him, no, I want to surprise you with how much I have grown or learned. And so that was a great part of our journey too.
I love that. And, when I think about a lot of pastors and people who make that choice, they lose a lot along the way, and they gain a lot along the way. And, a typical question is, what do you feel like you lost by coming out and making this stand? I'm sure you had some people that followed you, and I'm sure you had some people who dug their heels in and did not. And, how did you reconcile those that went with you and those that did not?
My coming out was really a gradual thing, because as I mentioned, I'm having all these tensions between what I was feeling and what I felt the party line was that I had to speak as a minister in that particular church. And so I was growing And I was also stretching the congregation. So as I built up an equity of trust with people, as I had relational capital, I knew that I could begin to nudge everyone, whether it was through stuff I began to write or through my messages. I could begin to try to pull people to a place of deeper understanding or greater empathy. And yet knowing what the inherent rules of being a minister, I knew, okay, if I say this, I can get by with that. But if I say this, that won't work. So that's where sort of my love for wordsmithing came, because I realized, okay, I want to tell the students in my youth group that I believe they're beautiful and loved as they are. How can I say that without triggering all the alarms from the powers that be? And what happened was students began coming out in our youth group, and we began to see this movement that really moved into the larger church as well, this sort of greater, wider understanding of what love really could look like. And so I didn't really, though, enter fully into that until I started blogging, and then got to the point where I wrote the blog post that sort of put me out into this national sort of visibility. And what happened there was I lost hundreds of, maybe thousands of people in the churches I had served in over that time, 17 years. And it was heartbreaking, family members, friends that either unfriended or unfollowed or, grew colder toward me, and some who just outright rejected me. But for me, that was the acceptable collateral damage of authenticity. And because I've always been cognizant of the fact that as a white cisgender heterosexual, man, I didn't really have as much to lose as LGBTQ human beings do. Like, the people could criticize me, they could say I'm going to hell and all that good stuff, but my moral worth was never in question. And so for me, whatever I lost, it paled in comparison to what's at stake. And I treasured the gift that I was given to be able to say in it to a national audience, to millions of people, you are loved without caveat or condition. And that's just how that is. And that began my sort of public journey.
When you talk about the journey, even though it probably seemed gradual at times, looking back, there was that pivotal moment where your blog came out and it went viral. And were you surprised at the separation? And it almost is like we can equate that to the division today, like how everything has prepared you for where you are now. And were you surprised?
Yeah, I was surprised. Well, I lived alongside these people, Sarah, and so I knew what they had heard, what they had been taught, what they're supposed to know about the teachings of Jesus. But then I began to see their political alignments, and you get to see the way, racism is embedded in the system that is white Christianity. You get to see, the misogyny and the xenophobia and all this stuff and the homophobia. And so it wasn't completely shocking, but it was very similar to my own, travels. It was a slow evolution, a revelation of what's happening. So I remember when Barack Obama became president, we had always had these men's breakfasts, which, is just kind of a ridiculous, antiquated church thing. But the dudes all get together and have breakfasts on Saturday. And part of those breakfasts was they would write letters to the president and to Congress, and they would be saying, we're praying for you, and we would all sign them. And Barack Obama becomes president, and suddenly we stop sending letters to the president saying we're praying for him. And so it's those kind of things where you start to take note of all these ways maybe you didn't understand the community as clearly as you thought. And so what the reaction to the blog and everything that happened after that was simply, okay, this is peeling back layers of things that were hidden for the sake of decorum or social acceptance, which again, now we see nationally in our political scene, a group of people that maybe we thought we knew, but we had this thing that wasn't created, it was simply revealed. Mm-hmm. And so in that way, they've been really parallel.
Yes, I agree. Once you see it in this area, once I was aware of it in the LGBTQ plus community, then I became aware of where it's everywhere. And it's been here a really long time. And so I'm just so glad that you really paved the way. You are one of the first pastors, evangelical, conservative, considered probably a mainstream pastor that came out. You really paved the way for others. But you have received a lot of criticism. You've been very politically, you have a a voice, politically minded, and that's what is a beautiful thing, that you can talk about your faith and the political challenges that we face in holding on to our faith.
And I love that allyship. I'll say as an LGBTQ person, there are risks with advocating for people anywhere. And
Right.
John, you touched on it. And, you can be vocal, you can be irreverent, you can even be offensive. Some people would judge you for. And yet you still will make a difference. Whereas if I were to be judgmental, irreverent, it would land different. And so that's where these allies that we have, like you, like Sarah, that you don't want to be known for being an ally. You don't want to, kind of
Right.
bask in the glory of going viral like you both did. It just happened to you. You didn't ask for it. And it has changed, so many lives just because of it, because you're willing to take the yuck because it's right.
Well, the thing about all this was that as it was happening, people say really kind words and they'll say things like, oh, I really appreciate your boldness and your courage. But for me, it was simply, I have a reality that I've experienced and I have a responsibility to speak that reality. So anything else would be cowardice. And so for me, I was having life, interrupt my, differ with my theology. I was getting these experiences of diverse human beings. And I had a responsibility, especially as a spiritual leader, to speak that. And that's the one thing that I think allies and advocates or people who seek to be don't understand, that you can't do that and have life be the way it was before. There will be a cost, and if there is not turbulence, I don't think you've pressed fully into allyship or advocacy, because it means you haven't reached those places of tension that you need to reach. And you're so right. It was hard for me initially to get this national platform very quickly and be placed up as some spokesperson for the LGBTQ community, even though I was not a member of it, because by de facto that just happened. As you said, there weren't a lot of pastors saying this. And so I had a lot of people from the LGBTQ community who were, trying to understand what my motivations might be, or how I'm, kind of critiquing the way I might be saying things. And I was just learning as I was going. So that was the most difficult part, trying to make sure that I was honoring the position that I was placed in without speaking around people or over people. And that's been, it's been a constant learning experience. But I did know from so many wise, especially older LGBTQ human beings who've lived as activists, and they said a lot of good things in the beginning to me. Like they said, you are going to have an audience with people that we will never have. And so you speaking directly to them has great value. You may be saying the same things we've been saying on our behalf, but they will land differently, as you say. And so I'm trying to always hold those two things in tension, that I am not a member of a community that I'm trying to stand alongside, but I also am being heard differently because of my privilege.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I love how you refer to there's a before coming out you and an after coming out. And I think that's true for allies and the community alike. I'm thinking about, we have Coming Out Day, and we also have what I call the most important Tuesday of our generation. And why is it important for people to come out now? Why do we need allies to come out now? Why do we need the LGBTQ community if they've been wavering? Why now?
One of the things, Katrina, that I learned as a pastor when I was wrestling with how much can I say, how much should I say, was that I owed marginalized, oppressed human beings, vulnerable human beings, I owed them specificity and authenticity in what I was saying. So it wasn't useful to me to speak in sort of generalities and to be vague about things, because in that there's what I call a dangerous ambiguity. Because let's say I was a pastor and I say, I'm for family. Well, everyone in my church could say, so am I. Great. But if I say I'm for family, and that's chosen family, and that's same-sex couples, and that's non-binary relationships, well, all of a sudden we're not talking about the same thing when we say family. And so I think allies and advocates need to be clear and explicit about what they believe and what they will not abide. And coming out day is so important because silence, you can interpret silence a lot of ways. And you're not really counted in the conversation until you stand and say, here is who I am. And whether you're LGBTQ or you're not. And so as a straight ally, I encourage more people to say, I want it to be clear who I am, because my identity is as important in this larger conversation as anyone else's. And part of that identity, I had a great talk with some of my folks who are part of my community here last night. And a woman was sharing that a friend of hers started speaking anti-LGBTQ rhetoric. And the woman said, stop 1 second. She said, you're not going to find an audience here for that. So let's move on. And she said the woman completely stopped and changed her countenance. And I loved that it was simply saying, whatever way you think you're going to go on some diatribe, that's not going to happen here. And what a great statement that was.
Given the current political season that we're in, what's next for you, John? What's coming up?
Well, surviving is part of it. It's really interesting because, as you mentioned, I'm seen in some sort. I have a platform, and the things I talk about regarding politics, some people pay attention to them, and that's a really odd place because it's never a place I imagined I'd be or wanted to be. For the first 5 or 6 years of writing the blog, I never spoke about politics, never mentioned a political party. And then with that specificity came, well, I have to do this now. And then what's unfolded over the past 9 years, I've just found myself necessary in that capacity. I would love there to be a day when I'm less needed in that capacity, because I love to do the work that is simple pastoral work, because we kind of have this political stuff, this tribalism hanging over our nation, but that discounts the normal stuff of life, right? Grief and relational fractures and just regular identity issues. And I would love to be able to spend more time just being with people in the normal collateral damage of living. And so I'm doing a lot of writing on grief and a lot of reflecting on things like that. But as long as we are as fractured as we are, and as long as there are so many existential threats, I'm going to just keep doing this work. I try to get up every day. Every day is crazy. Every day is different. But I say, what's in front of me today? How can I honor it faithfully? And then get up the next day and do it all over again. And because there's been no plan here, it's just get up and love people and do it all over again.
Well, right. You are a force, and I love your vision and just your heart to truly be just salt and light wherever you are. Thank you, John.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And the same goes for you, Sarah. I can remember our journey began, and we're kind of meeting each other at this pivotal time in both of our lives, as you said in the intro. And what was great was social media is this really cool barometer for what is affecting people. And then, I'd see there's my friend Sarah, and there she is again. And all of a sudden it was just, you were ubiquitous, which is so good, because I just saw the way Free Mom Hugs was just having these tremendous ripples, and it's only grown. And what I love about it too is, you and I, Free Mom Hugs, and what I actually have been waiting to make a shirt that says Free John Hugs, and I just want to follow you guys around and do that stuff.
Do it.
But what's great is we see these, and I'm sure you meet all sorts of people like this, where you say, we're all doing the same work. We're geographically separated, but we're emotionally and philosophically aligned. And so that's what this is about. It's about where you are in the small and close of your life. Do something to make the world more compassionate, more loving. It doesn't have to look like me. It doesn't have to look like Sarah. It has to look like you. And then that you're going to fill a void that no one else can fill. And so that's what I would encourage every person listening to do.
That's what it's all about. I say it all the time. This is not a competition. We all have the same goal in mind. But yes, it is true. I feel the same about you. I've always admired you, and I just follow your lead, and you're brave. You're a strong and faithful ally. And I do look forward to a time where you can focus on the task at hand being life and not such a fire all the time.
Right. Yeah.
Amen
And
to that for all of us.
yes. And I want to ask you, John, and then with our go-to question that we ask everyone, but we're in a season right now where a lot of us allies or in the community, we have family or friends that are in this place where they love us and they love our love, and yet they still are choosing another direction that will not be safe for us. And, those are frustrating moments, but what gives you hope in those arenas? We talk sometimes about what's called a movable middle, and those people may not be movable, but what gives you hope in that situation?
I was, we were doing this video call on our network last night, and most of us are, fairly progressive and sharing stories. And one gentleman, it was his first time on one of our calls, and he had waited to speak for a while, and he said, I was raised in Kentucky, Southern Baptist church, relative Southern Baptist pastor. He said, I was as conservative as they come. And he said, and I was a member of the military. I was all go America, go guns. And he said, I began to meet people who caused me to begin to question some of the things, and I leaned into a couple of those questions. And then later down the line, I met someone else and I paid attention to what they said. And he told us about this story where now he's at this place. And he said, if you had met me along this journey, you would have thought I was this closed-minded, bigoted human being. But there was something going on in me that I hadn't figured out how to process it yet. And I think that's the hardest thing, is to realize we are all in progression and our stories are not finished. And so I try not to, people say, John, are there people who we can't reach? And I say, there are people we can't reach right now, but everyone is reachable at some point. And so you just hope to try and be an incremental difference in their lives. And it's so hard for me to ever say what an LGBTQ person should do with a family member like that. But for me, I try to stay as long as I can in the hopes that I will be part of whatever breakthrough they have. I don't believe what I used to believe 10, 20 years ago. Most people don't. So we have to give people the gift of growth.
I love that. And I just, I want to thank you, because I feel like what we're requiring and needing is for allies to level up. And you are the perfect example of, as the times change, as the needs change, you level up. And I'm very grateful for that. And I hope that others follow suit.
Well, thanks. And I leveling up is one of those things where, as we were just saying, Sarah, I always say to people, you don't have to be a jerk blogger. That job is taken, right? So you don't have to, and your idea, activism of any kind, doesn't have to look like some stereotype that you have. It's just your character being expressed outwardly in a way that your values are present. And so, leveling up for someone could just mean, I'm going to linger with a conversation with a friend a little bit longer to try to hear a little bit more. Or it could be, I'm going to spend an hour working with an organization that I believe in. And what each of those steps does is it gives you better information, it surrounds you with different people, and it gives you better questions to ask. And as you ask those, you get to the next place. So that's the beauty of it. It's just start. And once you start, the rest will take care of itself.
We got to do something.
Yes.
We got to do something.
Amen.
Yes, and you are. And listen, I just realized nobody cussed this whole time.
Yeah, I'm kind of disappointed in myself. I could send you a stream of them and you can just put them in as you need
That's
to.
what we're
Plug
doing.
'em in.
Yep, we're going to contact Cliff, our editor, and we're going to squeeze them in.
Damn it.
That's right.
There it goes.
John, thank you so much for being here, taking time out of your day and spending it with us and helping folks level up.
It's been a joy to be with both of you, and I hope everyone listening just feels encouraged and challenged, and just love for the win. That's what I say.
Yes, love for the win.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
All right, thank you.
I just love John, Sarah, and I love that he gives us so much hope and tells the very unfiltered truth, and I appreciate that. Something else that's giving me hope is, as we're seeing a lot of the political climate shift lately, there's a reclaiming of the American flag and patriotism. And, there's been a time when the American flag, especially for the LGBTQ plus community, symbolized a lot of people that didn't like us, that symbolized the people that felt like America would be better without us. And so there was a season where, as much as we love America and love the American flag and our patriots, it became triggering to see it somewhere. It became kind of the symbol of what we were afraid of. And what I'm seeing happening now with people like John and other people is that there's a reclaiming of the flag occurring versus those times when it kind of made you feel uncomfortable. And I know you have a story that's wonderful about, kind of the shift that is now happening, but there was a season that even for you, the American flag was uncomfortable.
Yeah, when we were on tours, we would travel through, small towns, and oftentimes it'd be at night, and I often thought if the car broke down, which my Jeep would never do, but if the car broke down and there were houses on each side and one had an American flag and one had a pride flag, which would I feel safer going to in the middle of the night?
Right.
And it would always be the pride flag. And even like bumper stickers, I was on the freeway one day and there were two cars in front of me. I could see the bumper stickers. And one said, liberals are ruining everything.
Right.
And the other was equality for all. Now, one lifts up and one pushes down. And so I do hope that we are turning the page where we can reclaim, well, like the cross, like our faith, like the flag. There's a lot of reclaiming to do. I look forward to that.
Right, yeah. And I have a story when, here in Oklahoma City, I wanted a pair of cowboy boots. And, sometimes if you know about cowboy boots, especially the good ones, they do not come easily on a budget. And so I was asking for cowboy boots for Christmas, and I got a gift card for the Boot Barn. Mm-hmm. If you're in Oklahoma, you know all about the Boot Barn. Mm-hmm. And so I went one day, and I was so excited, and I tried on all these boots, all the different sizes, colors, if they had a tall leg, ankle, and if they didn't, all the stuff. And the one I kept going back to that was my favorite and felt the best had the American flag on the ankle piece, on the calf piece. Yeah. And I just kept saying no, and I'd put it back, and then I'd go look some more, and nothing fit, and I kept going back to it, and I was like, I don't want, these American flag boots that represent something that I don't represent. And then I had this moment where I thought, wait a minute, this is my America too. And so I proudly bought those American flag boots, and I wear them now whenever we speak, and it's pretty amazing, the feeling of reclaiming and understanding that this is my country too, and we do all belong here. And it'll be amazing one day when the American flag and the pride flag could maybe symbolize the same thing.
Yes.
How would that be?
Yes, that would be grand. A great day.
A great day for all.
I'm glad you got the boots, Katrina. We need to take a picture of those boots.
We sure do.
And share that story.
They're good looking.
Yeah. I get some great messages through private messages, snail mail, and this one came to me, and it's shared with permission. And they sent me a couple of photos of this beautiful young girl, and she's on the floor with a poster board, and she's painting the Free Mom Hugs logo. She's drawing it out and coloring it in, and she sent me this message. She said, "If you told me 10 years ago that one day my mom would invite me over to help her make a sign to carry in the LGBTQ Pride Parade, I never would have believed you. But that is exactly what happened today. Thankful for healing in this relationship, and so thankful for a mom who yearns to understand and support her daughter. Love will always win." Isn't that beautiful?
Love will always win.
Be sure to join us for our next episode. We are beyond excited to share the culture-shifting, brilliant mind of Kathy Baldock. her research into the interpretations and misinterpretations of the Bible that continue to damage the LGBTQ plus community and their families is truly life-changing and life-saving.
I love Kathy so much. She really has done the work and is an incredible ally. And I know I don't know everything, but I know she has taken some serious hits, criticism, and even threats for the truth that she is breaking wide open.
You don't want to miss this conversation. Kathy means so much to me and our family. When they say you have to unlearn and relearn your faith, Kathy's book has helped me and thousands more do just that.
Won't you stand up, won't you stand up, stand up, stand up.
That's it for this episode of the Free Mom Hugs Pride 365 podcast, Out for Equality. Now promise this, Mama, you'll get out and vote.
This podcast is produced by our friends at Good Faith Media. Learn more at goodfaithmedia.org. Our music comes from Pond 5. Our theme song titled Stand Up is by queer Nashville artist Heather Mae, spelled M-A-E. She is at Heather Mae Music on all social media platforms. You can listen to Stand Up and more of Heather Mae's music wherever you stream or download music online. Check out the show notes for more.
Join the Free Mom Hugs community at freemomhugs.org where you can learn, connect, and be proud.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast, give us a like and rating, and tell your friends about it. We know there is someone out there who needs to know they are loved and valued, and that a whole community of people are fighting for them.
If you find yourself needing support and someone to talk to, don't hesitate to call or text 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or reach out to our friends at the Trevor Project at thetrevorproject.org. Remember, you are not alone. Now stop what you're doing and let someone know that you love them, even if it's yourself.
Won't you stand up, won't you, won't you stand up, won't you stand up, won't you, won't you stand up, won't you stand up, won't you, won't you.